Appreciate you clicking on this review. I just got back from watching Inside Out 2, and with the sequel to Inside Out that premiered 9 years ago, we are once again following Riley, who hasn't aged 9 years, but is instead becoming a teenager. Riley is now 13, about to enter high school, and with this change, she is also facing some new emotions that start to cause some conflict inside her head. That's all. Putting aside any spoilers, you guys, this will be a spoiler-free review. It's always a lovely time when we got another Pixar movie to talk about. But man, where to even begin? Because Pixar has been through it a lot in the last 10 years. I know if you're someone like me and you grew up on Pixar movies, a lot like those classics, you just hold this extremely high standard for the studio. But I wonder if the kids growing up with the modern day Pixar movies feel that exact same way, because I don't know if they have hit the same. A lot of that might be due because they've been relegated to straight to streaming on Disney+. Then Disney really having to pay for that mistake when they wanted to put Pixar back in theaters, and Elemental having that real slow climb, eventually becoming very profitable. But it was a scary time where it looked like, man, is the heyday of Pixar over, and are they just gonna have to rely on sequels to their popular films coming out with Toy Story 5? And that is what we're talking about here, a sequel to what was one of their popular entries, the first Inside Out, which I can't believe is 9 years old. It still feels like that movie came out like 4 or 5 years ago. And well, going into this movie, I had my worries, but I had my excitement, man. Every time I go into a Pixar movie, I just wanted to hit that magical note, you know, that feeling you get when a Pixar movie's done, where you had your emotions tested, where you got a great story, you're laughing your butt off, literally witnessing what could be a classic before your eyes. Or is this just another one that hits in a kind of okay spot, but it doesn't really meet that standard you would expect from Pixar? The trailers seemed promising to me, but there were a couple of things throughout them where I was like, I hope that goes good. So now, having actually sat down and watched the movie, yes, this is Pixar at their best. I'm very happy to say that Inside Out 2 is not just a great sequel, it's a great Pixar movie. It hits all those high notes you're hoping for when you go into a Pixar movie. And I feel like that's been really hard to do lately, because Pixar has kind of changed the way they go about movies. Like, you remember when you would get a short before a film? They don't really do that. At least they didn't play a short before my screening of the movie. And now Pixar movies have post-credit scenes. Yeah, there are 2 of them in this movie, and it's just like, with things like that being added on and the way they go about presenting the movies, it just feels so different than past Pixar. But the quality of this movie reminds you what they can do when they're at their best. Let me go into the things I for sure enjoyed about this movie. For one is the story and the direction of where Inside Out 2 goes. While there's a lot of Pixar sequels out there, some of them feel more forced than others, okay? This is just my personal opinion, but Toy Story 4, although I enjoy that movie, it felt like it was forcing its sequel. Finding Dory, I understand some people like that one. I felt like it was forcing its existence. With Inside Out 2, this feels like a natural progression of the story. We saw Riley as a kid, and as you grow up, things become more complex, you feel different things, and that's what they're tackling here with her as a teenager turning 13. The new additions of the emotions I thought also worked well. I thought it was odd, some of the choices they made, like ennui or envy. I still found myself really engaging with all of them, especially anxiety. But it's not even just with the new emotions. There's new things they do with inside the body. That was one of the funnest parts of that original movie, is when joy and sadness are exploring Riley's mind, and they're going through all these islands or parts of the brain. And I always get a huge kick at not only the puns they do with like the sarcasm, but also just the creativity attached to them, because there's a lot of parts throughout Inside Out 2 that it's paying respect to animation. There's several different forms of animation throughout this movie, not just the regular 3D Pixar look, but they pay homage to like video game animation, some paper cut South Park looking animation, 2D animation, and that's stuff that I've always liked Pixar does, is they like to pay respect to their field. The new belief system that they throw in here that becomes the main plot device of the movie, I just was also fascinated with that concept. I know this is a kids movie, but man, there is some real maturity or kind of complex themes that Inside Out 2 tackles that are dumbed down to a kid level, still for sure entertaining, and you can very much appreciate it as an adult. But the way the movie handles breaking down emotions, what makes up our personality, all of that, like, it was just so fascinating. And with that, there is actually some serious things that go on, and I just love the way this movie handled more mature themes while still keeping it family and child friendly. Pixar has always found a way to live in that balance, and I feel like that's what really gives their movies magic, because of course this is an emotional ride. I'm not gonna say I was as emotional in this one as I was in the first. The first one actually got me, you know, crying. This one more just had tears start to formulate in my eyes, but I never really got to the point where I was bawling. Still though, I can for sure see other people just crying their eyes out in here, because there's even a couple of lines that are like gut punches to adults in here that I'm like, Pixar, damn, I was not expecting that. I also even want to take a second to praise the animation, because you can see the 9-year upgrade Pixar has gone through from the first movie to this movie. While I still think the first Inside Out looks like a beautiful film, this one is breathtaking. There is so much more detail, so much more vibrant, beautiful colors, even just the emotions themselves and the way the kind of fuzz on them sticks out a little bit more. There's just other shots, especially in that third act, that really stick out and you go, wow, this looks gorgeous. I walked out extremely happy with Inside Out 2. Another big thing I want to say before I jump on some of my negatives or things I didn't love as much, I think the key thing that makes Inside Out 2 very enjoyable, or a very crowd-pleasing movie to people who go check it out, is its relatability. That's what Pixar was kind of great at in the beginning, was these interesting ideas that were extremely relatable. You go back to Toy Story, toys coming to life. Who hasn't had that imagination as a kid? Monsters, Inc. There's a monster in my closet. As children, we've had that fear. Finding Nemo, getting separated from your parent, that's a big fear. Lately in modern Pixar, while I'm still a fan of a lot of these movies, it feels like Pixar has chartered into more niche territory, where it's like really specific or detailed stories that are no longer mass relatable to general audiences. You know, the biggest movie I kind of want to compare it to right now is like Soul, you know, because Soul was an absolutely amazing movie that dealt with also complex ideas about living, what life should be about, and how to appreciate that. And while I still think that was an amazing film, I feel like almost the ideas were too mature for children in there to not fully understand or appreciate at the time. Sometimes it went a little over heavy-handed in its existential crisis of living. While Inside Out 2 is a much better example of that same kind of complex thought and themes, but it's presented in such a palatable way, where it's executed where the 5-year-old next to you and the 40-year-old next to you are both gonna be hit with, God, life is crazy. And that's what I kind of really dug about Inside Out 2. Now, getting on to my negatives here, I think the biggest one that's going to hold some people back from fully loving this movie is just how extremely similar it is to the first. Because, yeah, if you break it down, the plot here is a lot like the plot in the first movie, okay? You have two conflicting emotions who want to go about controlling Riley in different ways. They cannot agree on it, and then they end up going through an adventure through Riley's head, seeing all the different parts of the brain, and then even ending off on a kind of similar note or theme. That for sure is very apparent, but I feel like it still worked out in a way, especially because of the belief system, this new thing they introduced in the movie, I felt was different enough than some of the things they did in the first. Although the ending of this film is extremely similar to the ending of the last movie, there was a part of me that felt like it did hit a little different this time around. But really, that's like the only main negative I can think of. For the most part, this movie is just really well done. Maybe some will have an issue with the way anxiety is portrayed, but I feel like comes towards the end, it all gets resolved much better. And just kind of to get back to it, I did mention at the beginning of this video, there are 2 post-credit scenes. It's not really stuff that like sets up the future of Inside Out in a third movie, but with that said, I definitely want a third Inside Out film. Like, it's just such a natural progression of where these stories could go. I want to see Riley become an adult, go to college, fall in love, or even then become a mother and have everything go a little full circle and take every life lesson she's learned in trying to raise her kid. I feel like this is one of those franchises that just every sequel they make could honestly feel natural, as long as they continue being creative and doing something new. Because if they rehash the same story for a third time, then maybe I'm definitely not going to enjoy it as much. So when it comes to Inside Out 2, I'm going to give Action 3 stars. Most of that will come from the exploring of Riley's mind. I feel like there's maybe a little bit more I would have wanted to see, but the different sections of her mind that we do explore I thought was fun. Commenting the movie, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. This has a great balance of some of that Pixar humor, some good slapstick thrown in there, a nice clever joke. I mainly found myself laughing at all the puns when describing certain locations in Riley's head. I just just found that the most funny. Drama in the film, I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I really love the story in here. They found a way to take something as complex as growing up, feeling new emotions, something we've all gone through, hitting puberty, but tell it in such a nice, clean way. Horror in the movie, I'll give no stars too. It's very family friendly. There's not one of those random moments that might scar you for life as a kid. And suspense in the movie, I will give it 3.5 stars. This did very well in building up my suspense and trying to figure out how our characters were going to complete their mission. And even especially in that third act when things kind of blow up, I was really on the edge of my seat to see how they would resolve that. Casual moviegoers, I'm going to give it an A+. Cinephiles, I'm going to give it an A-. And critically, I'm going to give it an A-. To me, Inside Out 2 hits that magical sweet spot you hope for when going to see a Pixar movie. And for that, I give it the 3C guarantee. Again, that's just my opinion on Inside Out 2. I'm really going to want to hear from you guys on what you thought about the movie. Like I said, even if you're a grouch, I still don't think you could walk away hating this movie. It met the expectations I was really hoping for with a Pixar film, but sometimes you never know how other people will take the movie. Let me know what you guys thought about the film. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.